This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Toy Story has an impeccable record as a movie franchise. Does there even exist another series that has made 4 excellent films in a row? I mean, Shrek, if you don't count the last 2, and The Lord of the Rings, if you compress the Hobbit trilogy into one film, but it's a good film. Or what about The Matrix? You know, if its sequels were as good as the first, and there was also an extra sequel. But the Toy Story franchise very nearly took a different direction in the mid-2000s, which means that this video is about the story of the Toy Story story that never became a story. And by story, I mean movie. And could you please leave a like? It helps and it takes no time whatsoever. And if you leave me a like, I promise at the end of this, I will tell you the story of how Toy Story cost me personally $2,000. That is a painfully real thing that happened. I'll come back to it later. Okay, so the year was earlier than now. Let's say 1995. So Toy Story is released under the Disney banner, acting as the first feature-length, completely computer-generated motion picture. It was a big hit. You want specifics? Sure, it made $373 million, making it the highest grossing film that year, beating out the likes of GoldenEye, Batman Forever, and How to Make an American Quilt. So a deal is struck and Disney signs Pixar to a 5-picture exclusive deal. First out of the gate is A Bug's Life, so they're one down. Then after initially planning to release Toy Story 2 as a direct-to-video situation, early footage is shown to Disney executives and they're like, hey nah, this is great, let's make it a cinema movie. So it gets tweaked and improved and rushed out, but again, it's a great success. Third highest grossing movie of 1999, with nearly $500 million worldwide this time. Then Disney CEO Michael Eisner, who people hate, throws a spanner in the works, hitting up Pixar head of creative John "The Hands" Lasseter and CEO Steve Jobs. Oh yeah, by the way, Steve Jobs was the CEO of Pixar. It isn't really relevant to the story. You don't need to remember that, but it just happens to be a piece of information in the story. Anyway, Michael Eisner says, yeah, you know that 5-picture deal that we all agreed on? Well, I'm sorry to inform you, but sequels don't count towards that. I will be needing 5 original movies. Non-sequels. But hey, thanks for the freebie, I appreciate it. So things sour, and years pass. Movies were released. And whilst Pixar was flying high with the likes of Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles, traditional animation was not doing so hot over at regular old Disney animation. And even with their first forays into 3D animation, you know, with the likes of Dinosaur and Home on the Range, making very little impact. So Pixar are coming up on 5 movies. The deal's nearly done. It was negotiation time. Except they went badly. Steve Jobs was like, listen, our initial deal, it sucks, and we're not interested in entering anything even remotely similar to what we've had. So Eisner thought, well, you know what? We own the rights to all of these Pixar films, which means any and all characters and any and all sequels. And I believe we are more than able to churn out additional films, and the general public will be none the wiser that Pixar aren't involved. So in 2005, Circle 7 Animation was born, whose goal was to make one Pixar-free Pixar sequel every year for the foreseeable future, with a budget of $100 million for each release. And the first up was the Pixar-free Toy Story 3, which was slated for release in the spring of 2008. Now, the Circle 7 Toy Story 3 bears some resemblance to the 2010 version, but it largely tells an entirely different tale. A tale that was to be directed by Bradley Raymond, who previously helmed a bunch of direct-to-video Disney sequels. 40-plus screenwriters pitched ideas, one of which being a mysterious tale revolving around toys disappearing into Andy's grandma's attic. But the story that they ended up going with is one revolving around the toys becoming concerned when Buzz Lightyear starts to malfunction, and a massive recall on his product line is put into place. Andy's mother ships him back to Taiwan, but it's revealed that the Buzz Lightyears aren't being repaired. They're being destroyed and replaced. So Woody and the gang, Rex, Slinky, Potato Head, Ham, Jesse, and Bullseye, head off on a rescue mission. The specifics are a little scant, but not impossible to find, especially if you have the internet. If you don't, look, I'm not even bothered, you'd never find them. But some concept images from artists Shane Zavalin and Jim Martinon showed up online a few years back. This includes a Buzz Lightyear shut down and attempting to be repaired by his friends in a makeshift ER. They've even got his schematics up on the computer. Images of Woody, Jesse, Potato Head, Rex and Slinky trying to survive on Taipei Street in Taiwan, one of them floating away attached to balloons, like in Up, a number of images of the toy factory, which is being used to crush and shred toys, Buzz nearly falling to his death, Buzz locked up with a number of toys that have been recalled, and of those toys we've got Cindy Scissors, a mariachi-themed robot, a wind-up tin boat, a Apology Bear, a Care Bear-styled soft toy with a faulty voice box, a mini RC, a tin donkey, a tin space robot, and Handy Hands, a plush toy slash Swiss Army knife. So yeah, all of these toys were basically deemed defective or dangerous, but they're all designed by a human called Mr. Kagoi. Also, there's the inclusion of this new character in Dax. There's a number of looks for this guy, including one where he's some kind of Transformer knockoff, but it appears in all incarnations that, like Buzz Lightyear, he's part of Star Command. By the look of him, I'd say he's some kind of superior and a somewhat sinister addition to the cast. I'm guessing. The people at Circle 7, they were rapt to be working on this, as well as Monsters Inc. 2, Lost in Scaradise, and Finding Nemo 2. These movies would go on to eventually get follow-up films, which again, are different incarnations. But at the time, within the industry, people weren't happy about this situation, even going as far to refer to Circle 7 as Pixar. You get it. So what happened here? Well, a number of things. One of which being the Disney shareholders were quite upset that the Pixar negotiations had fallen down. In March of 2004, 43% of them voted to keep Eisner on board as CEO, but despite this, he left in 2005. Enter Bob Iger, the man largely responsible for the purchase of Marvel, and whom also convinced George Lucas to hand over the keys to Lucasfilm in 2012. He recognized the obvious value of Pixar and re-entered negotiation, with the result being a $7.4 billion purchase of Pixar in January of 2006. This was right before the release of Cars, which was supposed to be the final film in that initial Disney-Pixar collaboration. Steve Jobs became a Disney board member, the two sets of shareholders were merged, and John, the Hans Lasseter, creative director at Pixar, resumed his duties, but now back with Disney, whom he'd previously worked with. So all's well that ends well, it would seem, except for all the employees over at Circle 7, whose future was thrown into great turmoil, like a fistful of sand being pissed into the wind, as the saying goes. Concluding the purchase by Disney, a number of scenarios were thought to be considered, and none of these meant the death of Circle 7, or so it was thought. According to Bob Hilgenberg and Rob Muir, writers on Toy Story 3, not that one, the thought was that all current sequels in development would continue as planned, and Pixar would send over some of its own people to just add a little bit of that Pixar magic, you know? Part of the deal must have entailed that Pixar would work solely on the project. Or maybe it was just decided by those higher up that giving Pixar full creative control was the way forward. Or whatever the thinking was, Hilgenberg and Muir showed up to their normally lively and bubbly workplace after the buyout, just full of joy and wonder, only to be met with a grim silence. That silence being because none of the Circle 7 employees were there. They later found out from a security guard that was because they'd all been summoned to the main lot for a meeting. So they waited, and as everybody slowly returned, with appearances described as ashen and shell-shocked, because the entire division was being binned immediately. So what do you do in said scenario like this one? Well, get drunk, obviously, and that's what the team did at 11 a.m. in the work party pit. You know what I'm talking about, that place that all workplaces have. And the fate of all those involved? All 168 employees? Well, Bob Iger had them mulched. Nah, but we'll get back to that. Now, it's said in the development of the 2010 version of Toy Story 3 that Pixar didn't consider any of the previous work done. So anything associated with the Circle 7 project was not even glanced over. But is that true? I mean, is it? I mean, I know there is such thing as parallel thought, you know, which is the idea that two people come up with the same thought completely independently of each other. You know, like Kimber and Simba. Even though, you know, with that parallel thought, there are a lot of years in between. But don't even stress about it, don't even worry. But let me just tell you, there are a lot of parallels going on between both versions of Toy Story 3. Both have toys being imprisoned, both have some similar designs, both have Buzz Lightyear repair and maintenance, and of course the opening sequences, whilst showing different adventures, also demonstrate an imagined representation of Mr. Potato Head doing a crime and then being stopped by Woody, Buzz, and Jessie. Also, at least one idea may have bled over to Toy Story 4, with one character also having a faulty voice box. That being said, even if these ideas were used, or borrowed, or stolen, or whatever you want to call it, Disney own both Pixar and Circle 7. So they have every right to use any and all ideas developed under them. And as for the full script, well, it's in Disney's vault somewhere, never to be released. You know, until someone just releases it online anonymously. The good news is, though, I guess, that of the 168 Circle 7 employees, 136 were absorbed into Walt Disney Animation Studios. And some even got to work on the likes of Bolt, and also good movies without John Travolta voicing a stunt dog.
This is stupid.
And now, when you flash forward to the modern day, there doesn't seem to be any ill will towards those involved working on the other version of Toy Story 3. It's just kind of understood that, you know, that's how the industry goes. There is, though, one theory, backed by an anonymous source, that Disney never intended to make anything with Circle 7, and the whole thing was an elaborate and expensive bluff. The source was quoted as saying, "That studio is never going to produce a single frame of finished animation. It's all just set up to get Pixar back to the negotiating table." Now, I can't speak to the validity of this. I think if Disney couldn't have reached some kind of agreement with Pixar, then yeah, Circle 7 was at the very least a solid backup plan. I mean, there's no chance in hell Disney would just walk away from these properties, considering how they kicked off an entirely new animation renaissance. And is it true that they didn't create a single frame of finished animation? Well, that's not entirely accurate. John White, a CG modeler who worked at Circle 7 creating this pre-Pixar Toy Story 3, has a showreel online where we get an early uncolored render of Emperor Zurg, and this test footage of Woody, but using dialogue ripped directly from A League of Their Own.
Are you crying? Are you crying? There's no crying! There's no crying in baseball!
There's zero chance that this was for the actual movie. But that being said, this is essentially all the animation publicly available as of this moment for Circle 7's Toy Story 3. Do you think, though, there's any chance that this version would have been better than the one we got? I mean, really, what do you think? I mean, it's really hard to imagine so, but frankly, we'll never know. What I do like about it, though, is that it's a Buzz Lightyear-focused narrative, and for me, he represents some of the funniest moments from the series. I love everything about that guy. The design, the Tim Allen performance, and I also love any time that we witness the delusion that one of them thinks they're the real Buzz Lightyear. I mean, sure, it wore a little thin by 2010, but we were still blessed with this moment.
Prison riot!
Which is one of my favorites from the series. Who's watching you right now? A vicious and sinister dog waiting to pounce? A ghost silently judging your thoughts and actions? Or somebody storing all your information from the device that you are currently on? Cybersecurity is important. In fact, when I was a teacher, I used to bang on about it constantly. It was one of my specialities, which is why a service like NordVPN, something I use, is important. It's useful for so many things. First off, it doesn't log any of your data, and NordVPN's Chrome browser is lightweight and user-friendly from the very first click. It secures your browsing in seconds, which for me, I find super handy for peer-to-peer sharing, because as I'm sure you're aware, using Nord will hide your VPN, so nobody will know who you are or where you are. This also means you can access streaming services or shows that are only available exclusively in other countries. Plus, it also works on Android and iOS. For a limited time, you can actually get 75% off a 3-year plan at nordvpn.com/MrSundayMovies. This special offer makes your subscription just $2.99 per month, so you can browse securely on all of your devices. And for a short time, you can use the code MrSundayMovies, or one word, to get an extra month of Nord for free. That's nordvpn.com/MrSundayMovies with the code MrSundayMovies. And all of that is linked below. Okay, it's time for my Toy Story I lost a bunch of money story. Basically what happened is I took part in a pub quiz and our team won the pub quiz, and at the end there was this bonus prize, and the idea was that one person from the winning table would go up and answer an extra question, and if they won that question they'd win a pool of money, which at that point was like $2,000. And I got sent up, so I'm like, well, this isn't gonna go well, is it? And there were 1 or 2 questions I could have got. There was one sport question and one movie question. So I'm hoping for the movie question because I would have shanked the sport one, and I happened to get it. And the question goes, in the movie Toy Story, and I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I know that movie like back to front. There is no way I'm not gonna get this question. I watched it like 1,000 times when I was a kid. I know it word for word. I'm $2,000 up. But the full question was, in the movie Toy Story, what is Andy's last name? And I have no idea what that is. And I'm pretty confident it's not said in the movie, so I take a punt. I'm like, is it Smith? Knowing that it's probably not going to be Smith. And it's not Smith, it's Davis. So I lose. which is great. So I don't have $2,000. But then to add insult to embarrassment in front of 200 people, the quizmaster goes, do you want the sport question anyway? And I'm like, well, sure, I'm up here. And he goes, okay, that question would have been, what is the name of the boxer who bit the ears off Evander Holyfield? And obviously it's Mike Tyson. That's not a difficult question. That's common knowledge. So I would have won if I had got the sport question. So yeah, thanks a bunch, Toy Story, I guess, for not having Andy's full name in the movie. It cost me $2,000. Now, if you want more Pixar stuff, you got it. Fancy yourself as a Pixar fanatic? Want to attempt our 50-question Pixar quiz video? I'll link that at the end and below. And of course, this Monday on my podcast, The Weekly Planet, where we talk movies and comics and TV shows, we will be discussing Toy Story 4, an in-depth review. So please feel free to swing by, maybe iTunes or Spotify, or it's even got its own YouTube channel, and a bunch of others. Whatever you want. But thanks for watching this. I appreciate it. Take care.